Another season is in the books. Of course, we already knew who the champion was coming into this race, but there were still a lot of other battles going on. Second in the driver's standings, we now know who got that. Still a battle for fourth in the constructors, and a lot of other battles that were going on. Sixth in the constructors, I think some other driver standings. Anyways, the two big ones wrapped up. We'll talk about that. And of course, with it being the last race of the season, that means there's a lot of last. Drivers leaving teams for other teams, drivers retiring. This year there were some big ones, so we will talk about those as well. But Max Verstappen won. That's not really that surprising. 15th win of the season. Outside of that, flawless season for him, pretty much. Outside of Brazil, which was probably his low, it was a pretty good season for him. Anyways, we've talked about him enough. Second in the driver's standings has been clinched. It was Perez versus Leclerc. Whoever finished higher would clinch that spot, and finishing second on the track and second in the standings was Charles Leclerc. Leclerc had a pretty decent race, qualified third, was behind Verstappen and Perez for the first stint of the race, but surprisingly, Ferrari did a strategy right. Red Bull went for a two-stop with Perez, and Perez actually caught up. He was more 15, 20 seconds behind after the pit stop, and he was able to cut it down to 1.3 seconds there on the final lap, but could not quite catch Leclerc. Leclerc was able to manage the tires pretty well, actually did a really good job driving today, so hats off to Leclerc. I mean, he drove a great race today. He was on those hard tires since lap, 23, 24, so over 30 laps he was on those tires, and the tire fall off seemed to be pretty big. So for him to hold on that long, for him to manage his tires that long, really good run for him to finish second, not just in the race but in the driver's standings, especially with how dominant the Red Bull was. Perez, still a fantastic year for him. He had a couple wins. He's never had a multiple win season coming into this year. Of course, this was his best opportunity to do it with how good the car was this year, but still a fantastic season for Perez, probably career best in every statistical category. Wins, podiums, top tens, points finishes, amount of points, drivers' championship standing. I mean, yes, he finished third in the standings and couldn't quite get Red Bull that first 1-2 in the drivers' point standings, but still a fantastic year for him. And then, yeah, so that was the biggest battle, I would say, coming into this. The other ones, battle for second in the constructors, it was a stretch. I think it was 20 or so points between Ferrari and Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton retired from the race, so that pretty much locked it up for Ferrari. And of course, with that retirement of Lewis Hamilton, that means this was his first ever winless season in Formula One. He has been racing in Formula One since 2007. He has raced for McLaren and Mercedes, and he has always had at least one win every single season he has been in F1. Championships, obviously, he's got 7 of them, but even the non-championship winning seasons, even the seasons he hasn't competed for championships, he's won races. But this year, 0 wins. That is one of the biggest surprises of the year, I would say. Early on in the season, it looked like it was going to be that way, but Mercedes really turned it on the second half of the year. They got a lot more podiums the second half of the season, looked competitive. They looked like Hamilton could have had a shot at the U.S., they look competitive in Mexico, and of course they got the 1-2 at Brazil, so they really picked it up later in the season, but still it wasn't enough for Hamilton to keep that win streak alive. He goes all of 2022 without a win. Alpine secured 4th in the constructors standings, but not without sending out Fernando Alonso with a bang. And by bang, I mean an engine bang, because once again, Fernando Alonso DNF because of mechanical failure. They just hate him. I'm convinced that Alpine just hates Alonso. I mean, how many mechanical problems did he have this year, whether it was qualifying or the race? I remember the first I remember, wasn't it Australia? He had the fastest lap going in Q3, and he had a hydraulics problem that made him crash. That's been the story of their season, and so now Alonso leaves, and I don't think he's sad to leave. Yeah, that was tough end for him. Speaking of ends, where's Alonso going? Aston Martin. Did Aston Martin have anything big this weekend? Oh, yeah. Sebastian Vettel. His final race in F1. The 4-time world champion says goodbye to Formula One. What a career. I mean, 4 championships, 53 wins. That is the 3rd most wins of all time. I think that's tied for the 4th most championships. He's only behind Fangio, Hamilton, and of course his hero, Michael Schumacher. So I think that's tied for 4th. If I'm missing someone, very sorry. But yeah, I mean, what a career, honestly. As I said, the stats talk for him. The 4 consecutive championships, all the race wins, some iconic championship duels with Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton later on in his Ferrari career. Won for multiple constructors, very impressive. Only won with Red Bull in terms of championships, but competed for some championships with Ferrari. And then this last stint at Aston Martin, did he win a lot? No, he didn't win at all, actually. But he still showed he got it. He got a couple of podiums with Aston Martin at Azerbaijan and Hungary. And, of course, you know, he's done decent this year. Aston Martin didn't have a great car, but he pulled together some points finishes. Finished 11th in the driver's standings. He had a decent year, but today we say goodbye to Sebastian Vettel. What a career it was. Great career, honestly. Can't say much more about it, but he got to do some post-race donuts at the end. Do some burnouts there to celebrate with the fans. So obviously a tough thing to leave the sport, I'm sure, for him, but he's moving on to different things, and if he comes back, he comes back. He might pull an Alonso, Schumacher. You know, they've both come back after their retirement, so you never know. We'll talk about all the other last here as we talk about the finishing results. Max Verstappen wins again. Once again, not much more to say. We've talked about Verstappen a lot this year on this channel. He wins a lot. He won the championship. I'd say he had a pretty good season. 15 wins on the year. That's a record. His 2nd world championship. His 3rd straight Abu Dhabi Grand Prix victory. In a row, too. Yeah, he had an impressive year. Charles Leclerc finished his 2nd. Great year for Leclerc. Yes, it started out so strong. They had high expectations, but it quickly came crumbling down. Mechanical failures, engine failures, strategy failures. That was, I tell you what, the ways Max Verstappen won or the ways Ferrari strategy failed, those were 2 things that were really fun to watch. Like, what was more fun, watching Verstappen go from 14th to 1st at Belgium or watching Ferrari put Leclerc on the intermediate tires when it was dry at Brazil? You know, it's a tough call. It's a really tough call. For real, though, Leclerc had a lot to overcome this year. Ferrari strategy, mainly. I'm going to keep joking about that because it's a joke. But anyways, solid year for him. He had 3 wins on the season, his career high for a season. Finished 2nd in the driver's standings, his highest ever points finish. I mean, probably a career high in podiums on a season. Career high on points, I think. I mean, he had a fantastic year. Regardless of the jokes about Ferrari strategy failure, regardless of the couple of errors he made, the biggest one being at France, he still had a great year. He had some great drives. You look at Austria, that win, he was having some problems late in that race that he had to overcome and had to hold off Verstappen. Flawless drives at Australia and Bahrain. You know, he's had some great moments this year. So nothing to be too disappointed at. Yes, I know the year started off really strong, really high expectations, but still a fantastic year for Leclerc. So lots to look forward for them in the future in terms of the driving. As for everything else, I think Ferrari needs to make some changes. Perez finishes 3rd in the race and the championship. Really good year from Perez. Not too much he can complain about. A couple of wins coming on street courses. Of course, one of those being Monaco, one of the biggest races in F1, if not the biggest. You know, he got a podium in his home race again. Sure, there was that controversy at Brazil with him and Verstappen and that whole incident. But, you know, he had a really good year. He had parts of the year where he struggled and he was off pace compared to Verstappen, but he had his moments, especially Singapore. I think that was a big one for him. He led every lap in that race. He had to extend to more than a 5-second lead after a penalty, and he ended up winning by 8 seconds or something. So he did have some really good moments this year. And I think that Singapore moment, that win, was a highlight for him. Yes, the Monaco win was impressive as well, but, you know, he kind of got some help from Ferrari there. But either way, Perez with a very impressive year, a couple of wins to his name, 3rd in the driver's standings. Yes, he didn't quite get the Red Bull 1-2 in the driver's standings, but still very impressive year. 4th place, Carlos Sainz. up and down season for him. It was a really bad start after the 2 DNFs at Australia and Imola. Had a lot of issues this year, but he did something that Leclerc didn't, which was he said no to Ferrari's strategy, and it ended up getting him some better results. You look at Monaco, where he got runner-up. You look at the win he got at Silverstone. Of course, that was a huge milestone for him, getting his first career win. You know, that's something that he's got to be very proud of, getting a win. It doesn't matter how it comes, he still won. He overcame the Ferrari strategy to win his first race. Really good season. He really picked it up, I felt like, the second half of the year at times. So a pretty good season for Carlos Sainz. 5th place, George Russell. He got his first career win this year. Up and down year for Mercedes. More like a down up. Really rough start. I mean, Hamilton missing or getting knocked out in Q1 at Saudi Arabia, and then they end up winning the second last race of the year. So, yeah, we could do this for every driver, but I don't have time. So, 6th, Lando Norris. Good season for him. Good race for him. He dominated Ricciardo again. 7th place, Ocon beats Alonso in the standings. Had some help from his team and his team's terrible engines and their terrible reliability. 8th place, Lance Stroll. Good result for him. 9th place, Daniel Ricciardo in potentially his last race in F1. Of course, he's leaving McLaren at the end of the year, and he has no set plans for next year. Reports are he's going to be the reserve driver for Red Bull. Nothing confirmed yet. But we'll see how that goes. But outside of that, great for him to finish in the points in his potential last race. You know, it's been a rough season for him, but to see him finish in the points, really good for him. Of course, 8 wins in his career, 1 with McLaren, the others with Red Bull. Decent career for him, a pretty good career. I think a lot of people wish they could say that they had 8 wins in F1. And of course, 10th, Sebastian Vettel. We've talked about him a little bit already, but he finishes in the points for his last F1 race. He has Lewis Hamilton to thank for that DNF there at the end. But great race for Vettel. Had some strategy. He had a Ferrari strategy today where Aston Martin kept him out very long on that first stint. When they pitted him earlier, they could have gotten a little bit better. I think they could have gotten an 8th place potentially, but you know, Ferrari decided to take over Aston Martin today. Anyways, a fantastic result for him. For Aston Martin, double points finish for them. And, of course, Vettel, his career now over. Don't know what else to say on that. 11th, Yuki Tsunoda. 12th, Zhou Guanyu. Zhou Guanyu, impressive rookie season. I mean, seriously, I feel like it's not talked about enough. He had a really good rookie year, you know. He didn't get into any stupid incidents. He wasn't controversial. He got a couple points finishes, and honestly, there were times he was in the points when his car just broke down. Some unreliability cost him a lot of points, in my opinion. He had a really good rookie year. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in F1 in the future. So he did really good this year. I'm really happy with his results this year. I thought he did great. Rookie of the year. I know he's the only rookie, but rookie of the year. 13th, Albon. 14th, Gasly. Gasly, it's his last race with AlphaTauri and within the Red Bull team organization thingy. He moves on to Alpine next year. 15th, Valtteri Bottas. 16th, Mick Schumacher. Of course, it was announced this weekend that Mick Schumacher would not return to Haas. I have thoughts. Sure, Mick did not have a fantastic year. There's no hiding that. He had some crashes. He had some inconsistencies. But replacing him with Nico Hülkenberg is not exactly the move I would have made. If you replace him with another young driver like an F2 champion or someone who's been really good in F2, I'd understand that. You know, get a young driver and develop him. You know, make him, you know, build him. Nico Hülkenberg has been in F1 a while. He's never gotten a podium, and he's been out of the sport for 3 years. It's nothing personal against Nico Hülkenberg. It's just, I don't see the upside. You know, it's not like he's going to be here for 10 years, so I don't get that call by Haas, but whatever. 17th, Kevin Magnussen. Shocked that he returned to F1 this year, but here we are. He got a pole this year for Haas. Yeah. 18th, Lewis Hamilton did not finish his first winless season. Shocked that he didn't win a race this year. I think I picked him to win the championship in the preseason. Boy, was I wrong. He finished 6th in the point standings, I believe. 19th, we lose a legend. One of the greatest in the history of racing. Not just Formula One, in history. The GOAT. As you may know him, Nicholas Latifi. Of course, the memes aside, it is Nicholas Latifi's last race in F1. He finishes 19th. Tough race for him. He had a mechanical failure that held him out of the race. Scored some points this year. Scored some points last year. Never forget that Nicholas Latifi scored points before George Russell at Williams. Never forget. And then last, Fernando Alonso, because Alpine hates Alonso. Anyways, that is all I have for today. And I forgot to mention Alonso's last race for Alpine, but as I said, they hate him, so they don't care. Anyways, yeah, that's the end of F1. No more NASCAR. No more F1. Time for me to spend my Sundays questioning everything and doing nothing but staring at a blank wall. Yeah. Anyways, for real though, hope you enjoyed all the F1 videos we did this year, whether it was news. We did some news. Most of the news gets announced at like 2 a.m. here, so it's like by the time I get to it, it's like not really news anymore. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed the videos this year. We'll make more, obviously, you know, postseason stuff and preseason stuff for next year, but we'll talk about F1, NASCAR, all that stuff, so leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff. I gotta go. Have a great rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are.